Lesson 24: The principle of the inseparability of being and his environment. Esho Funi. The principle of the inseparability of being and his environment, or the unity of self and environment, or the non-duality of life and environment, Esho Funi, is a fundamental principle of Buddhism. In the relation of this principle, the scholarly reformulation of which is nothing other than the human revolution, to history two moments are to be distinguished: the Esho Funi principle and non-dualistic teachings. At the outset, it must be said that before the assembly of the vulture woodpecker, the principle of the inseparability of being and his environment was unknown to Buddhism. In the non-dualistic teachings, the Buddhas did not live in our land, Saha, the land of suffering. The Buddhas, presented as pure beings, lived in a world of purities located in the west of the universe, the land of Buddha Amida, a land free from defilements. The earth, pandemonium of evil, of suffering, of evil beings, had only bad people as inhabitants, especially ekantikas such as women, people of vehicles, state of study, of self-absorption, Devadatta, probably the worst being in the universe. This approach to the Buddha's relationship to other states was theorized by the partitioning of the 10 states. That is, the Buddha state existed without the other 9 states, the state of hell did not contain the other 9 states, and so on. With the Lotus Sutra, the birth of the Esho Funi principle, the principle of the unity of oneself and the environment, or the non-duality of life and environment, Esho Funi, means that life, Sho, and its environment are inseparable. Funi, which is established in Chapter 2, Expedient Means, is a Buddhist theory of explanation of everyday life. From the establishment of the Esho Funi principle to Chapter 2, Haben, Appropriate Means. Chapter 2, Expedient Means, Haben, which universalizes the principle of attaining Buddhahood, breaking down the barriers that existed between the different states, establishes the principle of Esho Funi. This Chapter 2 teaches us that the Buddha state contains the other 9 states, the other 9 states contain the Buddha state, and each of the 10 states contains the other 9. So the Buddha comes down from his pedestal. Although he is awakened to the truth, he is fundamentally no different from other beings, even if they are ekankas. The Buddha says this right away in Chapter 2 above. Our land, Saha, is the land of the Buddhas. The Buddhas have decided to live in this world. The Buddhas teach in this world. The following syllogism will no doubt reinforce the said principle. Ordinary beings have no choice but to live on our land, Saha. But the Buddha and the female Buddha are like them. Therefore, the Buddha and the female Buddha have no choice but to live on our land, Saha. The Esho Funi principle, a masterful theory of life. The Esho Funi principle means that we are one with the universe. We reflect our world. When we change, so does our environment. We are one with the universe. Funi literally means two but not two. That is, the universe is not outside of us, we are not outside the universe. No self exists outside the universe. Man is the seat of the manifestation of the universe, just as the universe is the epicenter of the manifestation of man. This is what the Daishonin reveals about the attainment of Buddhahood. At every moment life includes both body and mind, the self and the environment of all sentient and non-sentient beings, plants, trees, sky, earth, and even the smallest speck of dust, under all conditions in this life. We reflect our sensitive world. The subjective self to which life refers is naturally dependent on the principle of karmic retribution. Therefore, the environment must be considered as the crucible of the manifestations of the Dharma. For example, a person whose life is colonized by the state of hell may perceive the beings around him as the Buddha state. If it is dominant in a man's life, leads them to perceive others as people stuck in the sufferings of birth and death, and that they must help them out of it. The Daishonin, in hell is the land of eternally peaceful light, says, neither pure land nor hell exists apart from ourselves, both reside only in our hearts. The Buddha is the one who is awakened to this truth, and the common man is the one who is deluded. That reveals that the one who adopts the Lotus Sutra will realize that hell is none other than the land of eternally peaceful light. When we change, so does our environment. Buddhism teaches us that our environment reflects our life, our inner strength, which is why when we change, so does our environment. This explains that all earth, all environment, belongs to the Buddha. That is to say, no matter what the circumstances, we can reach the summit of Mount Sumeru, attain Buddhahood. The quest for enlightenment is indifferent to where one is. Self-respect equals respect for the environment. Self-respect is a daily effort to get out of the sufferings of birth and death. Self-respect leads to respect for one's environment, that is to say, the alignment of the environment with the efforts made by us. This is what the Daishonin expresses in On the Attainment of Buddhahood as follows: if the hearts of men are impure, their land is impure, but if their hearts are pure, so is their land. Thus, there are not two kinds of earth, pure and impure in itself. It's not just the purity or impurity of our hearts. The Buddha, in the Bodhisattva Universal Wisdom Sutra, the conclusion of the Lotus Sutra, edifies us on the principle Esho Funi, without cutting themselves off from earthly desires or separating themselves from the 5 desires, they can purify all their senses and erase all their sins. Human revolution, the scholarly reformulation of the Esho Funi principle. The scholarly reformulation of the Esho Funi principle is the work of Todokenpon and his disciple Ikeda. When we change ourselves, life changes. The key to all evolution is our inner transformation, a change in our heart, our mind. This is the human revolution. We all have the power to progress. When we become aware of this truth, we can bring out this at any time, in any situation. Daisaku Ikeda in The Human Revolution, a fictionalized version of the history and ideals of the Soka Gakkai, President Ikeda writes, "The human revolution of a single individual will help change the destiny of a country, and consequently that of all humanity." Daisaku Ikeda, in the preface to The Human Revolution, the profound inner revolution of a single country and more will enable a country and, even more, allow the change of the destiny of mankind. For Tsunosaburo Makaguchi, the supreme and ultimate goal of life is happiness, that is, the creation of values. Happiness characterizes the performance of the one who can fully obtain and create values. Values that they translate as beauty, gain, purpose. Ultimately, the human revolution is the process of transformation of personal karma, that is, the alleviating of our karmic origin stables, opening up the creation of values, rubbing off on the transformation of universal karma due to the principle of non-duality between being and its environment. Of the non-duality of body and mind roaring against the tide of materialists and spiritualists, the Buddha sees life as the unity of the physical and the spiritual. From the conception of materialists and spiritualists and the understanding of the materialists, no reality is conceivable apart from nature or the phenomenal world. At the opposite end of the spectrum, spiritualists swear by the spiritual world, which they perceive as the true. Mocking materialists, spiritualists enclose the physical world in an illusory perception, which must be overcome. In Buddhism, life is the unity of the physical and the spiritual. Chapter 2, Hoben, expedient means or the cunning of Lotusic reason, which posits the principle of the unity of the physical and the spiritual has been consolidated by the theory of the 5 aggregates or components,